네, 여러분 잠시 후 1시부터 바로 개회식과 축하 공연이 시작될 예정입니다. 저희 앞자리부터 착석해 주시기를 부탁드립니다. 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 앞자리부터 순서대로 착석해 주시면 감사드리겠고요. 아직 리시버를 받지 못하신 분들은 리시버를 입구에서 받아오시면 감사드리겠습니다. 네, 여러분 지금부터 개회식의 공식 행사 시작에 앞서 축하 공연이 진행이 되겠습니다. 한글 자음과 모음에 따라 매핑된 사운드를 음악으로 표현한 미디어 아티스트 태싯 그룹의 축하 공연입니다. 뜨거운 박수로 맞아주십시오. 네, 감사합니다.
인문학과 미디어 기술의 융합을 통해서
문화예술의 새로운 장르를 이렇게 열어주셨는데요. 정말 글자와 사운드를 결합해서 이런 멋진 공연을 보여주신 태식 그룹께 다시 한번 큰 박수 보내주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다. 네, 이제 잠시 장내 정리를 한 후에 오후 1시 30분부터 제7회 세계 인문학 포럼 개회식을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 장내에 계신 내외 귀빈분들께서는 모두 입장하시고 자리에 착석해 주시기를 바랍니다. 그리고 오늘 행사는 동시 통역으로 진행이 되고 있습니다. 입구에서 리시버를 받으셨을 텐데요. 1번은 한국어, 2번은 영어로 이용해 주시면 되겠습니다. 아울러 원활한 행사 진행을 위해서 가지고 계신 휴대폰은 진동 모드 또는 무음 모드로 변경해 주시면 감사드리겠습니다. 그러면 잠시 후에 행사가 시작될 때 여러분들을 다시 찾아뵙도록 하겠습니다. 네, 여러분.
Good afternoon. I am Jo Hye-ji. I'm the MC of the opening ceremony of the 7th World Humanities Forum. It is a great pleasure to see you all here today. The 7th World Humanities Forum is actually began in 2011 because we want to deal with the 21st century tasks faced with the humanities. So the scholars and thinkers and artists and activists got together to talk about these issues from the perspective of the humanities. And today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, for 3 days, we are having this forum with the theme of the humanities of relationship toward communication, coexistence, and empathy, represented by 13 countries and 214 speakers. The scholars are here today to form 36 sessions. We are going to talk about various issues faced by the humanities to build consensus and also to think about the role to be played by the humanities. The programs are being live streamed via YouTube and also YouTube of 중앙일보 and also on Naver TV as well. So we have a lot of audience, not just on site but also online as well. So with that, with your round of applause, I'd like to announce the opening of the 7th World Humanities Forum.
네, 먼저 첫 번째
First of all,
순서로 국민 의례가 있겠습니다.
we are going to salute the national flag. So if you're here on site, please stand and please
국기에 대하여
salute the
경례.
national flag.
나는 자랑스러운 태극기 앞에 자유롭고 정의로운 대한민국의 무궁한 영광을 위하여 충성을 다할 것을 굳게 다짐합니다.
바로 모두 자리에 착석해
Please be
주시기 바랍니다.
seated.
시간 관계상
Due to the time limit, we are not going to sing the national anthem. And next, I'd like to introduce some of our distinguished guests here today. So as I call out each name, please welcome them with a warm round of applause. First of all, we have a Mayor Park Hyung-jun of the Busan Metropolitan City.
계속해서
And we have Chairman Lee Kwang-bok of the National Research Foundation of Korea.
네, 변창구 추진
And we have Chairman Byun Chang-gu of the Forum Organization Committee.
네, 저희 오늘 많은 분들께서 이렇게
And also we have many people in attendance today, so I apologize for not being able to introduce each guest here today.
계속해서 제7회 세계
Then,
인문학 포럼 변창구
I'd like to invite Chairman Byun Chang-gu to share with us the progress so far since the last forum. So please join me in welcoming Chairman Byun Chang-gu to the podium. So I welcome you all to the 7th World Humanities Forum. I'm the chair of the organizing committee of the forum. Thank you very much for being here today to celebrate with us the opening of the forum. Let me briefly share with you the progress so far of the World Humanities Forum. In 2010, to commemorate the anniversary of UNESCO, the UNESCO Secretary General talked about some potential issues faced by the humanities and thought about the need for new humanities in the 21st centuries. So we want to build more human-centric values. With this in mind, our forum began in 2011. And this forum, we want to encompass various cultural spheres from the perspective of the humanities to talk about the solutions solutions for the problems faced by the humanity. During the first forum, the Ministry of Education and UNESCO and the Busan Metropolitan City and also the UNESCO Korean Committee all worked together to host it. And we had a topic of universality in the word of multiculturalism. That was the first theme of our first forum. Can we really still advocate for universal values in the era of multi-diversity? And what should be the role of the humanities in such contemporary time? And during our second forum, again, it took place in 2012. It was hosted by the Busan Metropolitan City, and we talked about poetry, how poetry can help to heal the humanity. In year 2014, the forum took place in Daejeon city. We talked about the humanities' role in the era of the rapid development of science and technology. So we tried to look at various scientific topics or issues from the perspective of the humanities. And during the fourth forum, took place in 2016 in Suwon City, and the theme was the humanities of hope. So we wanted to overcome the issues faced by the humanities with the values offered by the humanity, and we talked about how better to build a sustainable society. For the fifth World Humanities Forum, it took place in 2018, again here in Busan. We talked about the human life in the fast-changing time. We talked about the clashes between civilizations and the scientific issues, and we talked about how to overcome them from the perspective of the humanities. In 2020, the sixth forum took place in Gyeongju. We talked about the humanities of reconciliation and prosperity. A lot of conflict, confrontation, and discrimination taking place around the world. So we need to really think about how to coexist with one another and how to pursue prosperity together. Now, our civilization is faced with great transformation. Now, we are living in a hyper-individualistic society, intensifying isolation among people. And also, after the COVID-19 pandemic, now we have a much less interactions, person-to-person interactions. And more people are living in isolation, and more hatred is intensifying. About 240 scholars are here today. We are going to talk about the humanities of relationship toward communication, coexistence, and empathy. We are going to shortly listen to Professor Jacoman from Sorbonne University, and also Professor Beck from Yonsei University, and Mr. Michael Kim from Google, and also Kofti Malankar from Leicester University. So they are going to deliver a keynote speech. And I hope that today's forum will give us various ideas as to how to overcome many issues faced by the humanity. Thank you very much for being here with us today. So with that, I'd like to end my progress report of the forum. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very
말씀하신
much.
것처럼
So,
이번
as
토론으로
summarized
인해서
by
우리가 직면한
Chairman
도전과
Byun, we
기대가
hope that
있는
today's forum
부분입니다.
will make a
다시 한번 좋은 말씀해 주신
contribution
병창훈
to solving
수집위원장님께
many
뜨거운
issues
박수
faced by the
보내주시기
humanity.
바랍니다.
Thank you very
감사합니다.
much.
네, 여러분 다음은
And
제7회
next,
세계 인문학 포럼의 주제가
the theme of
관계,
today's
문화,
forum,
소통,
as you heard,
공존,
is the
공감을
humanities of relationship
위하여입니다.
towards
모두가 함께
communication,
주제
coexistence, and
의미를
empathy.
되새기고
So,
공유를
as a
해보는
way
주제
to
영상을
remind
저희가 준비를 해봤는데요.
us of the
화면으로 함께
theme,
시청해
we
보겠습니다.
prepared a short video to share with you. The people are increasingly isolated to solve social problems. to drive a new practices. So what role could the humanities play to cultivate empathy through communications? What solutions does the humanities propose to overcome global conflicts and crises towards one human community? We step forward with the humanities. Solidarity through communication to solve the problems of disconnect and hatred. Through the fundamental analysis, we explore ways to build solidarity through communication, coexistence, and prosperity. On relationship with the human and non-human others. And to practice more empathy, we need to expand our thoughts. That is why we talk about the humanities of a relationship.
네, 박수 보내주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you very much.
네, 전쟁과 같은 국제적 위기뿐만
Now
아니라
there are some actual wars going on and also other problems such as natural crisis as well.
이번 포럼을
So
통해서
I hope that today's forum will help us to build a consensus and also to move forward towards more solutions.
먼저 이주호 부총리
Now I'd like to introduce Minister Lee Ju-ho of Education to deliver his congratulatory remarks via video. Good morning. I am Minister Lee Ju-ho of Education. I'd like to congratulate on the opening of the 7th World Humanities Forum. I want to thank Mayor Park Hyung-jun of the Busan City and also Chairman Lee Kwang-bok of the National Research Foundation of Korea and also President Byun Chang-gu of the Gyeonggi University as well. And with the technology development, we are living in a hyper-connected society. But actually, many people are living in isolation and loneliness. We are social beings, and we need to have healthy relationship with each other to have a healthy and rich life and to have a much healthier society. We are experiencing wars in the world and also many conflict clashes between genders and generations. And underlying all these issues are problems in relationship. So given that, I think it is very important that we are dealing with the humanities from the relationship perspective. And I understand that many scholars and also citizens are participating in today's forum. So I hope that we can talk about relationship from the humanities perspective in a very profound way. Once again, thank you very much for your participation in the forum. And I wish all of you great success in your future endeavor. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very
바쁘신
much.
와중에도 이렇게
So
저희
thank you very
포럼을
much
위해서
for delivering your congratulatory
부총리님,
remarks,
그리고
Minister
참석자
Lee.
모두를 대신해서
So on behalf of the
말씀을
audience here, I'd
드리겠습니다.
like to
자, 이어서
express my
박형준
thanks.
부산시장님을
And next, I'd like to
모시고
invite
환영사를
Mayor
들어보도록
Park
하겠습니다.
Hyung-jun
네,
of
무대
Busan
위로
City.
모시겠습니다.
Please
뜨거운
join me
박수로
in
환영해
welcoming
주십시오.
Mayor Park Hyung-jun to the podium.
제7회 세계인문학 포럼
I'd like to congratulate on the opening of the 7th World Humanities Forum, and I welcome you all to today's forum. And Chairman Lee Kwang-bok and Chairman Byun Chang-gu, thank you very much for putting together this wonderful event. And also, I want to thank Professor Jacques Omo from Sorbonne University in France and also Professor Beck from Yonsei University for your keynote lectures as well. So thank you very much. The World Humanities Forum aims to talk about, to tackle the issues faced by the humanity. We want to take perspective of the humanities. So the forum began in 2011, and we've been inviting many scholars all over the world. And Busan have successfully hosted this forum 3 times until now. And it's a great pleasure for me to host this event in Busan again after the COVID-19 pandemic. The reason why we are hosting this forum in Busan is because we have great scholars in Busan, located in Busan. and the location of Busan, and also the fact that we are a coastal city, we are very open to various thoughts from around the world. I think that is why we are hosting this forum in Busan. And also during the Korean War, many refugees came to escape from the war in Busan. A lot of filmmakers and writers and scholars of that time all lived in Busan. And the theme of today's forum is the humanities of relationship toward communication, coexistence, and empathy. Personally, even if I am born again, I hope to live in Busan one more time. I love Busan, and I think the basic element to build a happy city is that we need to have great relationship among people. Of course, it is important to have a good economy, vibrant economy, create jobs, and also to build a 15-minute city. But to make it possible, basically, we need to have a city culture where we are considerate of each other, thoughtful of each other, so people actually should want to live in Busan. That's what makes a city truly livable. And we also hope to host the 2030 Expo in Busan as well. So we hope to expand this spirit of Busan around the world. And there are also we have a Busan initiative to deal with the many issues faced by the humanity. We have the ambition to build our own Busan platform to solve issues, and we also want to overcome many gaps among genders and regions and generations as well.
전환의 부산을 주제로
So on the second day, there will be a special session on Busan, on movement and transition. The specific humanistic environment and why the 2030 World Expo should be hosted in Busan will be discussed in that special session. It is, again, a great pleasure to be hosting this special session in Busan, and I hope that everyone will enjoy their time in Busan and feel the warmth of the Busan citizens. Thank you for listening.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you so much.
네, 시장님 말씀처럼 이곳
Just
부산이
as
세계
Mr. Mayor
인문학 포럼의
said,
최초
Busan was the
개최지이자
first
이번에 네 번째로
location
개최를
for
하는
the World
장소인데요.
Humanities Forum, and it is hosting the forum for the fourth
아울러
time.
올해도 성공적인
Congratulations,
행사 개최를
and
또 축하해 주시면서 오늘 와주신 모든
I would like to
분들께 환영의 말씀도
extend,
이렇게 전해 주셨습니다.
along with
다시
the
한번
Mayor's
좋은 말씀해
words,
주신
a welcome to
박형준
everyone who has
시장님의
joined us to
박수
celebrate
보내주시면
the hosting
감사드리겠습니다.
of the World Humanities Forum in Busan. Again, thank you again, Mr. Mayor, for
네,
your warm
계속해서
words.
이번 행사의 개최를 축하해
Next,
주시기 위한
to
축사 말씀이 준비가 되어 있습니다.
celebrate the hosting
한국연구재단
of this
이광복 이사장님을 모시고
forum,
축사
we would like to
말씀
listen to
들어보도록
some words of
하겠습니다. 네, 뜨거운 박수로 환영해
congratulations
주십시오.
from the president of the National Research Foundation, Lee Kwang-bok. Please give him a big hand as he takes the stage.
안녕하십니까.
Good afternoon. My name is Lee Kwang-bok. I'm the president of the National Research Foundation. Today, the 7th World Humanities Forum is in its first day, and I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to everyone who has joined us for the opening of this forum. Since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, this is the first large-scale, face-to-face, in-person event, and I am all the more happy to meet you in person here. And I would also like to extend my thanks to the Ministry of Education, Lee Ju-ho, and UNESCO Assistant Director General of UNESCO, Gabriela Ramos, who have delivered their video messages, should also be thanked. And also Mayor Park Hyung-jun of Busan City and the scholars, academics, and experts who have came from home and abroad to discuss these very pertinent issues should also be welcomed as well. National Research Foundation supports not only science but also social sciences and humanities, and it promotes the creative research of humanities and also multidisciplinary studies across different areas. The National Research Foundation since 2011 has been a witness to the World Humanities Forum since 2011, and the many accomplishments of humanities around the world are being shared here, while leading academics from around the world are discussing issues that face humanity today. And this forum promotes the importance and value of humanities and provides a platform for exchange and cooperation around the world, and it is becoming exemplary foundation. In this time of great transition, when we are facing so many crises, we require the reflection of humanities. Throughout the pandemic, we have experienced isolation and disconnection, and the cessation of communication had led to diverse conflict and also hate. This year's World Humanities Forum is being hosted under the topic of humanities of relationships, and among the many conflicts of religion and different regions, and also the many issues that arise in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, we are seeking for solutions and alternatives to those issues. I'm actually an engineer from the by profession, and so there is a lot of concern from humanities scholars about the fourth industrial revolution and its problems. And I just wanted to mention that I look forward to the many solutions that will be provided by the humanities scholars. Coexistence and empathy and cooperation is required in this time, and the direction that humanities will set for us is a matter that we all look forward to. So people in science and technology have many concerns in this regard, and I hope that many new ideas will come from the humanities scholars. So I am in a group chat about artificial intelligence, and we are very much looking forward to the solutions that will be suggested. So not only humanities discussions, but also visual art and other cultural events are prepared that will help the participants engage with the Busan citizens. I hope that this event will help us overcome the crises and conflict around the world so that we can go forward towards a world of prosperity and coexistence. And the National Research Foundation will continue to value the importance of humanities and provide the foundation for humanities study with much accomplishments. And I would also like to extend thanks to the chair of Hyun Chang-gu and all of the people who have put in so many efforts for the success of this forum. And I hope that this will be a resounding success.
네,
Thank you.
감사합니다. 네, 말씀하셨던 것처럼
So as was mentioned, since the pandemic, we have experienced isolation and disconnection, which has led to conflict. But through communication and coexistence and empathy, as per our theme, I hope that humanities scholars will be able to set the direction towards communication, coexistence, and empathy. I would like to extend my thanks once again to President Lee Kwang-bok of National Research Foundation again. And then I would like to move on to a video message that was sent by Assistant Director General Gabriela Ramos of UNESCO.
I wish to thank the Minister of Education of the Republic of Korea
대한민국
and the
교육부
Busan
그리고
Metropolitan City
부산특별시에
for hosting the 7th World Humanities Forum.
제7회 세계 인문학 포럼을 개최해
I also
주신
would
데
like to express my
감사드리고
gratitude to the
싶습니다.
National
또한
Research Foundation of Korea,
한국연구재단과 유네스코 한국위원회 그리고 경희사이버대학교에서도 성공적인 행사를 위해서 헌신해 주셔서 감사드립니다.
I deeply welcome this continuous cooperation.
대한민국 교육부와 유네스코 간의 지속적인 협력이 유네스코의 주요 사안에 대해서 이처럼 지속되는 점에 대해서도 깊은 감사를 드립니다. 즉, 포용적이고 지속가능한 미래를 위한 인문학의 기여라는 문제입니다. 7회 세계 인문학 포럼의 주제, 관계 인문학, 소통, 공존, 공감을 위하여 역시 매우 시적절합니다. 소통과 공존, 공감이 전 세계에서 매우 부족하기 때문입니다. 현대 사회에서 분열과 절망을 초래하는 문제가 많지만 사실 그 문제들이 우리를 매몰시킬 수는 없습니다. 저는 우리가 사는 세계가 인문학의 분과 학문에 새로이 헌신할 필요가 있으며 이는 바로 대화를 통한 평화로운 공존에 영감을 주며 인권과 기본적 자유에 대한 열망과 존중을 바탕으로 하기 때문입니다. 인문학에 대한 지식은 촉매제로 작용을 해서 진정 포용적이고 지속 가능한 사회 조건을 조성할 수 있습니다. 인문학 연구와 표현은 풍부한 다양성을 가져오기 때문입니다. 그래서 인문학 연구와 표현은 분석뿐만이 아니라 이해와 의미 부여를 통해 인간과 그 행동을 다루기 때문입니다. 그래서 오늘날의 세계에서 소통과 공감과 공존은 매우 중요해지고 있습니다. 왜냐하면 인공지능 혁명에 어떻게 대응해야 될지, 이 기후변화 대응을 어떻게 해야 할지, 증폭되는 불평등과 지정학적 갈등에 어떻게 대응해야 할지, 그리고 이런 문제들을 어떻게 이해할지, 그리고 학문에 들어간 의사결정을 어떻게 내려야 할지 등 굉장히 시급한 문제가 많기 때문이다. 이 문제를 해결하기 위해서 필수적인 통찰과 도구를 제공하며 인간 행동의 심도 깊은 이해를 추구하고 보다 효과적이고 공감하는 내용을 이끌어내는 것이 바로 인문학입니다. 그리고 인공지능의 기술 혁명이 계속 진행되면서 이런 기술이 사람의 삶과 관계에 어떤 영향을 끼치는지 이해할 필요가 없습니다. 인문학은 학문에서 다루기 어려운 인공지능의 윤리와 사회적인 함의 등을 다룰 수 있으며 이를 통해서 인간의 가치에 부합하는 인공지능, 책임성 있는 인공지능 시스템을 만들 수 있습니다. 바로 그렇기 때문에 유네스코 사회인문학 섹터에서 2021년에 최초로 글로벌 인공지능 윤리 표준을 저희 제언에 따라 제정했습니다. 그리고 현재 저희는 신경과학의 윤리를 연구하고 있습니다. 이 다양한 주제로부터 도출되는 기술 연구 그리고 정책이 인공지능의 사회문화적 함의에 반영되어 AI에 대한 이해를 높이고 있으며 이것이 바로 올해 세계 철학의 날의 주제가 될 것입니다. 세계 철학의 날에는 인공지능의 정신건강 분야에서의 윤리적 함의를 다룰 것입니다. 한편 당면한 또 다른 위기로 기후위기는 전례 없는 글로벌 협력을 필요로 하며 이는 효과적인 소통과 공감을 통해서만 달성할 수 있습니다. 인문학은 기후위기의 시급성과 인간의 삶에 미친 영향을 전달하는 데 기여할 수 있으며 인문학은 또한 이야기를 공유하고 마음으로부터의 공감을 얻어서 환경 스튜어드십에 대한 책임성을 갖게 합니다. 인문학을 연구함으로써 우리는 또한 기후변화의 저변에 있는 문화, 경제, 사회적 다양한 요소를 더 잘 이해할 수 있습니다. 이를 통해 보다 종합적인 다학제 간 해결책을 도출할 수 있습니다. 그런 관점에서 저는 저희가 지속가능성 과학의 가교 연대를 출범했으며 이문학, 사회과학, 예술 그리고 교육학 분야의 전문성뿐만 아니라 각 지역 현지 및 원주민의 지식을 통해 변혁적 사회 활동을 도모해서 인간으로 인한 기후변화와 생물 다양성 소실을 완화할 수 있을 것이라는 점을 말씀드립니다. 6차 IPCC 보고서는 세계 인구의 3억 명의 인구가 기후변화에 취약한 국가에 살고 있다고 보고하고 있습니다. 저희 고국인 아카풀코는 전례 없는 수준의 허리케인을 맞이했습니다. 그런데 전 세계적으로 이와 같은 현상이 진행되고 있습니다. 기후변화에 가장 적게 기여했던 공동체들이 불균형적으로 많은 영향을 받고 있습니다. 또 빈부 간의, 남녀 간의, 지역 간의 불평등이 사회 안정과 지속 가능성을 위협하고 있습니다. 여기에서도 마찬가지로 인문학이 불평등에 대항하고 역사적, 문화적, 사회, 경제적인 요소가 불평등에 어떤 영향을 끼친지에 대한 핵심적인 통찰을 제공할 수 있습니다. 이를 통해서 체계적인 본질을 인지함과 동시에 대응을 할 수 있도록 합니다. 사회혁신 관리 프로그램이 인문학을 혁신을 하면서 동시에 정책과 의사결정으로부터 나오는 통찰을 잘 활용하도록 합니다. 마지막으로 국가 간 그리고 각 국가 내에서의 긴장과 갈등이 고조되고 있습니다. 지정학적 갈등과 긴장의 시대에 인문학은 섬세한 관점을 통해서 이런 문제의 근간을 다룰 수 있습니다. 역사, 문화, 사회, 정치 요소를 분석을 하고 이러한 갈등을 아주 다른 차원에서 해결할 수 있는 바탕을 마련하고 있습니다. 효과적인 외교적인 활동과 국제 관계에서의 협상은 다양한 문화와 관점에 대한 깊이 있는 이해를 필요로 하면 이건 인문학이 지원을 할 수 있습니다. 이렇게 다각적인 도전 과제에 직면한 현 세계에서 기술, 인문학, 과학을 한자리에 모으는 것이 필요하지만 무엇보다도 인권과 인간의 존엄성을 우선에 두는 것이 필요합니다. 이런 문제를 더 심도 깊게 이해할 수 있도록 할 뿐만 아니라 연결성을 찾아서 이러한 도전 과제에 효과적으로 대응할 수 있는 협력을 도모합니다. 의미 있는 소통과 공전을 통해 인문학은 보다 조화롭고 지속 가능한 미래를 이렇게 복잡한 전지구적인 문제에도 불구하고 달성할 수 있도록 합니다. 그리고 이와 같은 관점에서 성공적인 포럼이 되길 바랍니다. 상상력과 창의력 그리고 희망이 바로 21세기 사회가 긴급하게 필요로 하는 것들입니다. 어떤 이런 이니셔티브들이 필요하고 유네스코가 인문학의 실제 변화를 가져올 수 있는 어젠더를 조성하도록 도움을 받아야 될 것입니다. 우리는 이미 많은 지식을 가지고 있기 때문에 거기에 힘을 실어주는 것이 필요합니다. 정치 기반과 행동에는 인문주의, 새로운 인문주의가 필요합니다.
네, 바쁘신 와중에 또 이렇게
Thank you very much for sending this congratulatory message, Assistant Director General Ramos of UNESCO. Please give her a big hand. So I would like to extend my thanks again to the four distinguished participants who have provided very warm words. And now I would like to introduce the artists who will give a performance. Korea's first painter with a prosthetic is going to prepare an ink wash art performance. We are now setting the stage. As soon as the stage is ready, we will begin with the performance.
네, 간략하게 석창우
I'd like
화백님을
to
좀
briefly introduce the painter Seok Chang-woo.
서양의 크로키를
He brought together croquis and calligraphy from Asia. So ink wash croquis is his specialty, and he had a performance at the Sochi Olympics and at the Pyeongchang Paralympics. There was also a performance staged by the painter Seok Chang-woo. He is a world-renowned performance artist. Now, as soon as the stage is ready, we would like to invite the painter Seok Chang-woo up on stage. Please give him a big hand as he takes the stage.
네, 사실 수묵 퍼포먼스라고
So, I was wondering what an ink wash performance would be like. This is the opening performance that is titled Humanities of Relationships.
네, 여러분 뜨거운 박수
Please
보내주시기
give the artist a
바랍니다.
big hand.
네, 이제 석창 하백님께서
So, the painter Seok Chang-woo painting will be displayed for our audience. The staff are going to lift up the artwork and show it to the audience.
제7회 세계 인문
The 7th World Humanities Forum celebratory performance, Korea's first prosthetic.
작품을
Artist with a prosthetic has provided an art performance.
개회식이 모두 끝난 뒤에 로비에 걸릴 예정이니까요.
This
참가자분들께서
artwork is going to be displayed in the lobby after this opening ceremony, and I would like to recommend that the participants take a good look at it out in the lobby and also take photos if they want.
네, 이제 그림을 들어주시면
So
감사하겠습니다.
the artwork is being lifted.
네, 여러분 뜨거운 박수
Please give a big
부탁드립니다.
hand for the artist.
네, 제7회 세계 인문학 포럼 개최를
Celebratory
축하하며
performance
석창우
from
화백님께서 이렇게
the artist Seok
그림
Chang-woo
그려주셨습니다. 다시 한번 뜨거운 박수
for
부탁드립니다.
the 7th World Humanities Forum. Please give him another big hand.
네, 화백님 한 말씀 부탁드립니다.
Do you have a short comment?
오늘 그 그림 퍼포먼스는
This performance,
에 맞게 이제 고민을 하다가
I was trying to prepare one that fitted today's theme, and I was drawing bicycles. And I used different colors to symbolize many different people of diversity of different ethnicities
작업을 했습니다. 감사합니다.
네,
to work for a world of
감사합니다.
coexistence and empathy.
사고가 있었지만 역경을 딛고 세계적인
So in spite of a very unfortunate accident, Seok Chang-woo has overcome this difficulty and has become a world-renowned artist. Another big hand for the artist as he leaves the stage.
네, 이 작품 다시 한번 안내드릴게요.
I'd
로비에
like
전시가 될
to
예정이니까요.
let the audience know that it will be on display in the lobby, so please enjoy it later on.
세계 인문학 포럼의 성공적인
So,
개최를 기원하는 아름다운 수목
That was a beautiful
관람하셨고요.
inkwash art performance to celebrate the 7th World Humanities Forum. And next we have a photo session. The distinguished participants in the front rows, could you please come up on the stage and join us for a photo shoot?
올라주시기 바랍니다.
Could you please follow the instructions of the staff to join us on stage?
네, 사진 촬영하는 시간을 가져보도록 하겠습니다.
This
안내 따라서
is
조심히 올라와
The
주시고요.
group photo shoot. Please mount the stage. Be careful.
네, 주요 내빈분들 무대 위로 올라 주십시오. 사진 촬영
Distinguished
진행하도록 하겠습니다.
guests have joined us on stage. We will like to go ahead with the photo shoot.
네, 앞에 카메라를 이제 봐주시면 감사드리겠습니다.
Please
우선 첫
face
번째
the camera.
포즈로 정자세 하시면서 웃으시는 표정.
Please smile, stand up straight and smile at the
네,
camera.
웃으시면서 정자세 부탁드립니다.
Please
하나,
smile and
둘,
stand straight.
셋.
1, 2, 3.
네, 좋습니다.
Thank you.
이제 화이팅 하는
Next,
거 한번
raise your
부탁드리도록
fist
할까요?
and say
네, 제가
fighting.
제7회 세계 인문학 포럼이라고
When I
하면
say
파이팅
7th
해주시면
World
됩니다.
Humanities
오른쪽
Forum, you
들어주십시오.
say fighting.
제7회
Right
세계
hand up.
인문학 포럼
Fighting.
파이팅! 뜨거운 박수 보내주십시오.
Please give them a big
네,
hand.
이제 마지막 포즈
Now,
박수 치는
last
포즈 한번 부탁드릴게요.
pose.
마지막으로
Please
박수 치겠습니다.
clap and applaud.
네, 축하드립니다.
Please clap
여러분도
and
함께
applaud
박수
for the
쳐주세요.
camera.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
네, 좋습니다.
Thank
이제
you.
내빈분들 사진 촬영 다
So
끝났으니
that's
무대
the end
아래로 내려가
of
주셔도
the
좋습니다.
photo session. Please step down
네,
stage.
이상으로 제7회 세계 인문학 포럼의
So
개회식을
that was the
모두
opening ceremony of the
마치도록
7th World
하겠습니다.
Humanities
개회식에
Forum.
함께해 주신
I would like to
내외인
thank
여러분들께
all
다시 한번
of our
진심으로
participants who
감사의
have joined us
말씀을
for
드립니다.
this
지금
opening session.
잠시 장례
After we set the stage, we will go on to the plenary keynote lecture. If you will please bear with us for a minute, we will have the plenary keynote lecture. Professor Emeritus of Aesthetics, Sorbonne Nouvelle University, Jacques Aumont, will be speaking to us on the human powers of images. Please stay tuned for that plenary keynote lecture. As soon as the stage is ready, we will go on to the plenary keynote lecture.
제7회 세계인문학 포럼 기조 강연에 오신
I would like to welcome all to the plenary keynote lecture of the 7th World Humanities Forum. I will be the moderator for the session, Jihyun An.
Welcome to the keynote speech for the 7th World Humanities Forum. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen and esteemed colleagues. My name is An Jihyun, faculty member in the Department of English at Seoul National University, and I will be moderating today's talk. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker for this year's forum. Today's keynote speaker, Professor Jacques Aumont, does not need an introduction, as he is a world-renowned scholar whose work has pioneered the fields of film studies, visual arts, philosophy, and the humanities in general, whose work has profoundly changed and inspired academics and scholars all over the world. But Professor Aumont's work has gone further and beyond the boundaries of the academia. Indeed, it would not be an exaggeration to say that his work has changed the way we perceive the world and ourselves through the medium of images. To do justice to all of his lifetime achievements would be impossible, but let me briefly mention a few. Professor Aumont is Emeritus Professor of Aesthetics at the Sorbonne Nouvelle in Paris. He has taught at many universities all over the world, in France, the US, Canada, and the Netherlands. His pioneering work in proposing an approach to film aesthetics that gives full rein to the power of the image itself, with particular attention to historical determinations, has transformed the fields of aesthetics and the visual arts. He has served as the editor of many prestigious film journals, and his achievements have been awarded with the prestigious Balzan Prize in 2019. The title of today's talk is The Human Power of Images. Please join me in giving the warmest welcome to Professor Jacques Aumont.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Very gracious indeed, almost embarrassing. Well, I have chosen an indirect way to address the major and very important issues of this forum. I've chosen to speak of images, as you see, and as I am in some a specialist. Images, just a second, this is it. Images reach to us. I won't dwell on that affirmation. I'll take an example right away. What do we see in this photograph? We see 5 persons, 5 people of different ages, from toddler to old women. They all look at us with different expressions. Before even knowing anything about them, we are affected by their presence, by their expressions, to which our body reacts. We experience what is called empathy. If I inquire a bit, I shall learn that these people are refugees from the north, and they were photographed by an American soldier around 1953 here in Busan. Well, I've read and heard stories about the hard lives of these refugees, and so have you, I guess. And my automatic reaction is now supplemented, if I think of it, by historical and objective knowledge. This image, along with the many others that the same photographer did, communicates something to me. I felt empathy and perhaps compassion when I discovered this image. Now I can think, for example, about the millions of refugees in the world today. This helps me go beyond my sentimental reaction and ask myself, as we are trying to do in this very forum, general, political, and humanistic questions. Sorry, excuse me. And finally, as do all images, this one does not simply record the fragment of the visible at a given moment. It opens onto some invisible that exceeds it. It is about human beings, and my projection and understanding are natural. But even then, the image reminds me that I live in a world that is made up of forces that I cannot fully penetrate. If we are careful in our use of images, they may open us up to an apprehension of our coexistence with the world, including the vast realm of the non-human. For thousands of years, images have been at the heart of the constructions of human societies and the maintenance of social ties. They have defined communities of knowledge and use which vary from one society and culture to another. This is why they only make sense in the right context. A European religious painting is destined to be displayed in a consecrated place. A Japanese painted scroll has to be presented in the tokonoma, a domestic place of sacred origin. An African mask only makes sense during ritual ceremonies, also of sacred essence. In the same way, profane images have their own sphere of circulation, making them accessible and comprehensible. The film, watched in a drive-in in the 1950s or on a smartphone today, or a manga today, or its predecessor, the ukiyo-e, 2 centuries ago, not to mention all the images on Instagram, all these circulate in a certain milieu, which in turn they coordinate. One of the most massive consequences of globalization has been to blur this correspondence between images and their context by making them circulate without limits. I can see today how much as I want of rare and precious sculptures, for instance, such as this, Quakertle mask and this archaic Greek kouros. But it will be in the space of artistic and cultural merchandise or on the internet. This is an important issue which has two sides, negative and positive. The problematic aspect of the circulation of images is that they are caught up in a large set where potentially everything is equal, which risks depriving them of their authentic social resonance. The mask and the statue I show were produced by human groups who saw in them something invisible, a spirit. If I see them in a museum, I shall be aware of their plastic strength and their success as art objects, but their proper cultural reference will be lost. On the other hand, on the positive side, we are learning more and more every day that an image is a major tool of communication within the human groups that populate the planet. Some of these groups have produced works that have achieved great visibility. The Greco-Roman statuary, the Christian iconography, the Buddhist statuary, the Chinese or Middle Eastern calligraphy. Other groups have remained little known for a long time, but we do know now that they, like the others, produced an iconography. The image is a human cultural asset, not specific to any particular civilization, however brilliant. That's what we are faced with today with the development of anthropological studies. I've matched this mask and this statue. A century ago, this would have been either a joke or a provocation. We know now that it is neither of these. They are both images and both endowed with the same power of communication and social bonding. Two last remarks on this point. First, to play their role as instruments of communication between individuals and groups, images have had to create social devices with rules that are often implicit but always essential. A well-known example is the cinema, which has created a very popular apparatus, including movie theaters, festivals, specialized press, film reviews in the media, etc. It's also the case for very specific types of images. For 20 or 30 years, for example, in the 19th century, the photographic visiting card was a type of image with very limited circulation among rich people and snobs, which had to invent its audience and its means of distribution. The images that are circulating by the billions today also have a device, a sophisticated, very easy to use, and without which they would not be within everyone's reach. What I want to stress is that each kind of images and of image devices creates invisible communities. The Turin shroud, to take an example, has been shown only on rare occasions for religious and then for scientific purposes. Very few people have seen it, but small groups continue to discuss it at length. To take the example of cinema again, it gave rise to groups that still function in the age of the smartphone. For example, these two apparently analogous film scenes, in fact, appeal to very different communities of connoisseurs. On the one hand, superhero fans on top. On the other hand, supporters of authorism. Second remark, some images are seen collectively, others are viewed in isolation. The Lumière cinematograph prolonged 19th century forms of collective spectacle in theater and variety. And it was this model that developed throughout the 20th century, with ever richer institutions, ever more refined technology, larger audiences, etc., etc. But there is another model, that of Edison, his kinetoscope, a solitary spectator facing the machine to see moving images, a model to which we are returning with small and mobile screens that are increasingly individual. Does this mean the end of spectator gatherings and the community they embodied? Not quite, I think. The cinema century has created habits, has fostered and consolidated group experiences, which endure beyond technical change. However, this remains a fundamental question. Is communication of the same nature in a theater where I share my reactions with an audience, or in front of a machine that sends me back to myself? Capillary distribution is a mass medium, even more so than distribution via specialized channels as in the 20th century. But it is also more isolating for the receivers, who, in order to communicate through and with images, must bring their experience, knowledge, and vigilance into play if they are not to be misled to increasingly uncontrolled images. This is, of course, one of the challenges of images produced by artificial intelligence. They now have an existence almost analogous to images produced by traditional means, including photography and cinema. We can still distinguish them, but it will not be long before this distinction can only be made by a specialized algorithm. We are all aware of the dangers, the proliferation of fakes, the loss of credibility of images, and so on. It is too early to say what answer mankind will find to this vital and urgent question. Let's remain optimistic. Communication with and through imagery has always presupposed a more or less conscious knowledge that enables us not to confuse the artifact that mimics the visible with the visible itself. AI is progressing, but the answer lies in the parallel progress of knowledge about it, which will enable us to continue making human use of images to communicate. Let's go back to my first image. If we look at it again, in spite of everything we may know about it, we still feel with the same force the surge of empathy that reached us. I don't know exactly what overall impression to retain. Is it relaxation? Is it anguish? Is it a pose for the photographer? Is it a spontaneous attitude? But my body, on the other hand, does not need that much reasoning. It projects itself spontaneously, and differently for each of us, of course. Such is the law of empathy. It imposes itself. It does not ask for my opinion. And such is the effect of the image. It freezes empathy, choosing once and for all what in a real scene can affect us and how. The idea of empathy was invented a century and a half ago. And I'd like to emphasize two things. First, that it was from a questioning of the action of images that the idea of empathy was born, under the German name of Einfühlung. Secondly, that empathy is not sympathy nor compassion, with which it is often confused. In the words of its first proponent, Theodor Lipps, empathy is an imaginary imitation of another's experience. It reaches us involuntarily and strongly, but it does not make us share in their suffering like compassion. Imagined imitation. Images have not always been photographs. 30,000 years ago, there were images drawn in caves that reach us just as strongly as if they were from yesterday. We'll see a few in a moment. For example, this disproportion between an aurochs and horses transports us into a magical world. Even more rudimentary images, such as negative hands, reach us across the millennia, even though we don't know what they mean exactly. We don't know at all what they mean. They do not communicate with us, but they touch us immediately. It's a kind of primitive empathy. The communicative function of the image was aimed at man as a member of society. Empathy targets him as a subject endowed with a psyche, and in three ways. One, images make their model present. They represent it. Whether it is well or poorly depicted doesn't make any difference. Even if they're imperfect in detail, we have no doubt that images convey an experience of the world. In cave parietal images, or in a child's drawing. Two, this imaginary presence is supported by a certain degree of resemblance, which in turn presupposes that I can identify this resemblance. In the child's drawing, I won't see a laptop if I've never had a laptop or never seen one. If I don't know anything about the rites of candomblé, I won't see in these statues the Orisha spirits that they materialize for cult participants. The image is a likeness, but it can only know, I can only know what it looks like if I master certain codes. And three, the third gift of images is expression. The smile of a refugee father, the smile of a child listening to music on his laptop, the serious expression of prehistoric animals, all are immediately perceptible. Three inseparable subjective effects which have justified the importance we attach to images to the point sometimes of wanting to ban them. Presence, which convinces us of the reality of an experience, resemblance and meaning, which presuppose cultural knowledge, and expression, the emotional aspect of the image. Einfühlung, the empathy within the image, is the feeling that enhances the sense of presence and makes us sensitive to expression, that makes us feel the images and project ourselves into them. To see the Orisha spirit beneath the garment presupposes knowledge. To feel the state of mind of the young draftsman or the ferocity of the buffalo is given to us unconditionally. We have an innate ability to read in the image of a human being what we receive as a feeling. This is at the heart of the empathic phenomenon. Any image of a human body produces a small shock in the viewer's own body, making us feel that we are putting ourselves in the other's shoes, that we share their affects. We may be wrong. We may have misunderstood what is being expressed, but we do feel it intimately. This power has been used extensively by beliefs in a world beyond the sensible. The demons of Christian painting, the ghosts of Japanese imagery, all use direct channels to communicate pain or horror to us. In a minor mode, this has been the choice of many fantasy universes over the past half-century, for example, in the world of gaming and its derivatives. An art as realistic as portrait has largely been an art of empathy. The portrait must resemble the sitter visually, but only an empathetic impulse can persuade us that it resembles morally. When he was photographed, Churchill was preoccupied with the vital decisions he had to make during the war, and he communicates his annoyance and anxiety. On the other hand, a self-portrait like this reaches out to us almost like the Japanese demon. We can't tell what the model is feeling, but we're caught up in the image, and it colors us with a feeling that is not our own. Photographic images first amazed people with their faithful reproduction of appearances, but today, on a par with handmade images, they are, above all, vectors of emotion. Some famous photos, this one, for instance, the migrant mother, or perhaps even more, the Napan girl, have become veritable icons because of their irresistible empathic power. The empathy produced by images is a remarkable power. If recognized and channeled, it can play a major role in consolidating social relations and interpersonal closeness. Of course, the speed with which images now circulate and are created necessarily engages our responsibility. We must ensure that the emotional does not prevail over the rational, nor replace understanding and, by extension, solidarity. The risk with empathy, which we must counter, is that it may lead us to believe in the reality or even in the truth of what it shows. Fake images are just as empathetic as truthful ones. The image has always played an instrumental role in shaping knowledge and cementing social ties, and it has always exercised great power in producing empathy. What has varied most in the way it has been understood and used is its indirect relationship with the essence of the world that surrounds us. How does the human relate to the non-human? Historically, humanity has followed two concurrent and sometimes antagonistic paths: that of science, objective knowledge, and that of belief, ritualized or not. These two paths were present from the start in images. The images drawn in caves were visually accurate, but their purpose was magical or fetishistic. The scientific on the one hand, the supernatural or spiritual on the other, two opposing or complementary ways of approaching the enigma of the non-human world, we are not finished with this dichotomy. Let me take the simplest example, that of the relationship between humans and animals. The human body in its natural functions is an animal body. And animals are close to humans in many other ways. Some animals have a memory, some are able to reason to a certain degree, etc. The major point of difference remains that the animal has no artificial means of communication and expression, no language, properly speaking, no images. Humans have always recognized this closeness to animals. It is essential to shamanic and fetish beliefs, where the animal becomes the incarnation of a spirit, like in this American statue or in these African objects. It is interesting to see that this belief has persisted in civilizations that were intended to be more rational. For instance, in Egyptian hieroglyphs, or very differently, in the catalogues of human temperaments in the 16th and 17th European centuries. Animals were used to help humans reflect on their own condition, as here. Even today, it's hard to escape the reflex of projecting human feelings or human characters onto animals. It is interesting to note that while humans were able to depict animals accurately from the very beginning, it's as though they subsequently gave up this ability in favor of a more immediate, less rational, but spontaneous relationship, and had to constantly relearn objective knowledge about the animal. Mediterranean civilizations had returned to simplified states of representing them, like this and this other ox. Western iconography is a long journey of rediscovery of what prehistoric man knew. When the painter Albrecht Dürer draws a cat around 1500, he does so with perfect accuracy. But his rhinoceros has a fantastic touch, as does Lange's 2 centuries later. It was ultimately photography that provided the irrefutable means of producing real documentary images of a rhinoceros. The invention of digital technology has added many technical qualities to this documentary approach, making it possible to multiply images and catalogs of images. All this is very interesting for our mastery of the animal world, but it's still our mastery that is at stake. In other words, the subjugation of animals by humans. The animal is man's prey, or it works for man, or it entertains or comforts man, like our so many pets. The documentary image, useful for knowledge, reproduces the dissymmetry of relations. It is the human who makes the images and who considers the non-human for his own ends. What about the other path, the magical or spiritual way? Humans never cease to marvel at the very fact of existence, but being remains impenetrable to us, and human life takes place for the most part in a double of reality where the image is at its most effective, since it precisely creates an imaginary double of the world. Therefore, the image has no difficulty in evoking entities inaccessible to our senses. The Japanese ghost was imaginary, but not more imaginary than the spirits portrayed at the end of the 19th century in spiritist photos, which were fakes, of course. Or better, perhaps, in the post-mortem photos, which portray and stage the deceased as if they were still there, allowing us to experience something unspeakable about this last enigma of our lives. Today, we can have erratic photos, which of course are pure fantasy. Animals have lost much of their magical prestige since photography, which prevents us from imagining them as other than they are. However, I am struck by the current proliferation of vivid animal images, which cultivate sensation, even the sensational, and have in common an attempt to move away from the documentary to reach another reality, less scientific than poetic. This tapeworm, for instance, these mantis are living beings. They actually exist, but their staging in the photos presents them as highly humanized monsters. The result is ambiguous. Do I feel closer to the animal portrayed in this way, or have humans once again invented a tool that allows them to take control of the situation? Similar things could be said about the plant environment, although this is a much more recent idea, the so-called plant turn. For a very long time, it was considered a paradox that plants are living entities, but immobile and inexpressive, and therefore more or less inert in our eyes. It was through notions that were a little vague, but very prevalent in certain cultural contexts, that trees, flowers, grasses came to be seen as entities worthy of consideration, even sometimes going so far as to appear not as objects, but as subjects. Certain trees, for instance, and even more certain images of trees pertaining to what's called pareidolia, convinces visibly that the tree is an autonomous being, and why not, a feeling being. But this is because it then resembles a human, as was demonstrated in a funny way by the ants of the Lord of the Rings. In fact, we are still caught regarding plants in anthropocentric notions, such as landscape, an idea that is common to several cultures and has been further popularized by photography. Painting in China, in Europe, later in North America, has exalted this feeling of nature that would be there in front of us, giving off no meaning, but something like a spirit of its own, which we could perceive or sense. Of course, this is again a human look at the outside world, but it implies some real openness to the non-human environment, and it may lead to a reconsideration and a detection of its own properties. One does not truly see a landscape is not sensitive to some ineffable quality that this view of nature does deliver. In the same way, I'll be brief here, images of the cosmos, even those made for purely scientific purposes like these two, open up a world in which we don't recognize ourselves, but in which we are literally immersed. They serve to increase our knowledge, of course, But such images take us into the infinite world. And if we have a little imagination and sensitivity, they may yield something like a blissful giddiness. All in all, what I see as striking about images' relationship with the world, living and non-living, is in this first quarter of the 21st century, is an intricate combination of documentary, more or less assumed spiritualism, and expressivity. These appealing images often aim for sensationalism rather than information or emotion, but they betray the human fascination for all its coexistence. Besides, the often gleaming sides of the images on offer ties in with the long history of the fantastic and the ghostly in the image, and today extends into another, even more fantastic hypothesis that the images themselves are alive. There are books on that. This overly animistic proposition is probably not to be taken literally, but as a stimulus to reflection, it is highly suggestive. For instance, how are we to understand the appeal of the images produced in generative adversarial networks, where a machine learns to produce images, these GANs which exert so much fascination on contemporary artists? You see here an artist's work. It's easy to get the impression of an intelligence and perhaps of some strange form of vitality at work in these images sequences when they attempt to approximate a model. Images have always had many uses. Memory images, private or collective, images linked to play, religious images, images of art. In all these uses of images, there is a stepping back from the reality in which we are immersed, and which imposes itself on us without giving us any meaning. Gaming abstracts us from reality to create another provisional reality, although it may last forever nowadays. Memory turns our lived reality into something like a narrative. Art may become a tool for contemplation and withdrawal from reality. I have tried instead to highlight other virtues of images which can bring the same powers into play, but for other purposes. Used as a means of communication, the image has a status that is either interpersonal or public, and often a mixture of both. The exploratory images I mentioned last aim at something like revelation when they don't have outright ambition to open us up to a reality that is itself difficult to perceive. Finally, the register of emotion, undoubtedly the most archaic of all, plays on the raw powers of the human body and produces the phenomenon of empathy. These great functions, values, and powers of images do not contradict their individual and personal uses. As in all our lives, there's a dialectic between what comes from us, our consciousness, our memory, our mind, and what comes from the world. This reality which we will probably never master, but which we must address from all sides, if possible through coordinated efforts. Through its enormous social reach, the image perhaps more than language, is a privileged means of coordinating human efforts. I shall conclude with two remarks, which I'll try to make as optimistic as possible. First remark, living together as a society is based on consensus, but also on dissensus, discussion, dispute, contradiction, war. The globalization of images since their automated reproduction 2 centuries ago has enhanced their role in this process, which is inevitable and in fact indispensable. There's no such thing as a self-revealing truth, and discussion will always be the most important social activity, the one that alone enables us to act with a genuine knowledge of facts. We're reminded of this every day now, especially at this time, and especially since the mass circulation of images began. Countless caricatures are designed to do just that, stir up controversy. The same is true of moving image works. Many films are designed to spark debate while dramatizing ideological aspects of our societies. What was known once as militant cinema was designed to spur action. In a 1968 film, it is asserted that, you can read it, every spectator is a coward or a traitor. You must act, you must participate, not to be a coward or a traitor. In a totally different way, the message of films from the past may become unacceptable or partly unacceptable today. There's one very famous example now, that of The Birth of a Nation, with its praise of the Ku Klux Klan. The image communicates, it moves, it reveals, but always by mingling with conversation, with discussion, and sometimes dispute. Second remark, the digital revolution has brought an absolute novelty. We no longer just look at images, we make them instantly and without difficulty. Images are increasingly seen by viewers who are not surprised by them because they make some themselves, usually in large quantities. This has not overturned our relationship with images, but it has added a kind of conscious distance to them, which means that at the same time as we see an image, we also see virtually the way it was made, especially, as I said before, since the advent of AI-generated images. This increasingly concrete knowledge of how images are made tends to make them the medium of more intellectual discussions, with exchanges of arguments, explicit questioning, and so on. Images have never fulfilled their communicative function as much as they do today. However, neither empathy nor an escape into non-human worlds have disappeared from images as they appear to us. My conviction is that the empathic power of an image has not diminished with the digital age, but that its relationship to other equally important dimensions, such as truth, has profoundly changed. This kind of violent images were much seen in France in 2023. They're very striking, and they make you react immediately. But after all, they're only fakes. We urgently need to reflect on the new paths taken by images, because they shape our lives and commit us totally to them. Images have become intelligent, yet they continue to work on our bodies. It's up to us to manage this contradiction intelligently. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Omong. Perhaps you can have a glass of water while we're waiting. Okay. Thank you for your gracious talk, for this lucid and insightful analysis into the relationship between images and empathy, and the power of images to transform and shape the way humans communicate with humans and non-humans in the 21st century. Now, with the time remaining, we're actually out of time, but I think I have about 5 minutes. Maybe 2 or 3 questions from the floor. I'm sure the audience has many questions. 저 질의응답 시간으로 들어가는데요. 저희가 시간이 많이 없어서 한 5분 정도 할애할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 한 2-3분께서 질문해 주시면.
So due to the time limit, we can take maybe about 2 or 3 questions, and feel free to ask questions either in Korean or in English. So I will translate the question.
Any questions from the floor? 일어나서 해주세요. 감사합니다.
Can you please stand up? Thank you.
First, thank you for your inspirational speech. I have one question. You told us that the images, they only take on their full meaning when they are related to their original context. And I'd be really appreciate if you could explain more about this, because if paintings are in museum or gallery, do you think they don't have full meaning? Even if they are out of original context, but maybe would they have a full meaning in current context? Or they can't carry on the original context in museums or gallery? Can you explain more?
Oh, of course, I could explain for hours, but I thought it was a more or less trivial idea. We do not see images from the past, even the fairly recent past, as the contemporaries saw them. Take any example. Take the example of the Velázquez Venus that has been not exactly lacerated, but there had been something thrown at it at the National Gallery yesterday or the day before yesterday. It's a masterpiece by Velázquez, one of the greatest painters. And what we see when we go to London, to the National Gallery, is this beautiful painting. We see beauty, we see a nude woman. So if we're perhaps an activist feminist, we protest against the nudity of women in painting. We can relate it to nude paintings in the 16th and 17th century, but we have no notion of what a friend or a contemporary from Velázquez saw in this painting. All we know is that his eyes were struck by the same kind of visual rays that ours, but the ideas that were in his or her mind at the time, we must reconstruct them. That's the work of historians of art. It needs hundreds of pages to reconstruct a context for viewing a painting, not a very old one in this instance. If you address parietal paintings, of which I've shown a few, the task is almost impossible. Nobody knows what the men or women who painted them thought, or desired, or intended, or wanted. We just have the images, and they are baffling, they're stupefying. But what do they mean? Nothing. nothing for us, absolutely nothing, because we've lost absolutely the whole context. So I'm sorry, these are extremely banal examples, but I may not have understood your question.
질문이 되셨나요? 네. 예, 앞에 계신 선생님.
Yes, we'll have the microphone over to the person in the front.
Thank you for your lectures. Immensely inspired by your lecture. But my question is this. AI has made constantly many fake knowledge, fake image, fake opinion to the people. This fake can certainly lead sometimes the world to chaos or destruction or tragic situation in the 21st century. So that I propose you to stop the further development of AI. Do you agree or not? Thank you.
I think that we're all in favor of stopping fakes, of course. We all agree.
예, 질문이 혹시 없으시면 제가 한 가지 질문을 if I may ask you a few questions while waiting for the audience. I was fascinated by your construction of the relationship between images and language. At some point, you say that images are the medium through which we can form knowledge. But on the other hand, you also privilege language and communication sphere over images and empathy. So I would like to ask you to clarify a little bit more in that respect. And my second question is actually a much more difficult question. It's a very fundamental question. You showed that simple, poignant picture of North Korean family in the very beginning. And I think you have a hopeful, longing that we all would feel some kind of empathy because we all do react. But Suzanne Sontag and others, have mentioned that most modern spectators, we actually are very indifferent, and we are spectators and consumers of violence and suffering. And you showed the interesting, clip of The Birth of a Nation, for instance. So my question is, wouldn't some pictures evoke hate and indifference, although for other people, it creates certain solidarity towards empathy? Thank you.
Well, as you can imagine, answering such a question would take forever. But I'll leave aside the question language versus images because that would be too much. I'll concentrate, if you allow me to, on the question of empathy. Empathy is, my definition of empathy is not perhaps the most current definition of it. When I read about empathy, I see that it's absolutely confused with compassion. I tried to take it back to its first meaning in the 19th century, which assigns empathy to a bodily reaction, which we can't master. We have it, we experience it, whether we want or not. That's our body that reacts. My body is not your body, obviously, and they won't react in the same way in front of the same image. I may be in a sort of stupor when you may remain totally indifferent. That's a quite, no, it's a basic but absolutely fundamental questions. My body is not yours, your body is not mine. That's all there is to it, in my opinion. But the phenomenon of empathy is there. Well, I know the books of Susan Sontag, of course. I don't agree with her. Of course, the indifference seems to have developed. We can digest such a number of unwanted images that we become fatigued, tired of seeing them, and indifference is sometimes the result. But when we are watching images, when we're not just seeing them, but watching them in an exposition, in an exhibition, for instance. The image of the Pusan refugees I saw in an exhibition, I was there standing in front of this huge photograph. There was a reaction, there was. I didn't know these people, I don't know their personal history. It struck me. It may not have struck another person, but empathy it's not an objective phenomenon. It's objective in as much as it exists, not in as much as it has a definite result once and for all. That's about what I can say in 5 minutes.
Thank you. Perhaps one more question before we finish. 한 분 정도 자, 여기 중간에 계신 선생님 한 분만 더 질문 받겠습니다.
우매한 질문인지 모르겠는데요.
I don't know if this might be an ignorant question. 알아듣기 힘들다.
아니면 그대로 되고.
Images. Some images are natural. Some come from the nature. Some images are man-made, artificial image. But we give meaning to the images and we study about them, like by experts. So you are supposed to feel this about this image. So
Professor Oman, was that
what is the reason for that?
question? I think he's asking, some pictures are from nature and some are artificially created. What's the reason?
I have perfectly understood the distinction between natural images and artificial images, man-made images. What I'm wondering is what would be natural images? The face we read in the moon?
I think he's referring to pictures of nature, trees, mountains, flowers.
But all images are man-made. The only example that comes to my mind is the famous man in the moon. For centuries there was the idea that the moon depicted a human face. Of course it was a pure projection, but is that an image? It's an image imagined by man. I don't see what a non-man-made image would be. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm wanting imagination.
I think you got the question and it's been translated. 예, 질문 감사드립니다, 선생님. 예, 시간 관계상 그럼
Due to the time limit, so we have to wrap up this lecture. So another round of applause for Professor Omong, please.
네, 여러분 진행에 수고해주신 서울대학교 안지원 교수님께도 큰 박수 보내주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다. 네, 이렇게 제7회 세계 인문학 포럼 개막식과 함께 기조 강연까지 함께 하셨습니다. 이어지는 분과회의 세션에도 여러분들 많은 참여해 주시면 감사드리겠습니다. 자세한 내용은 나눠드린 리플릿을 참고해 주시면 되겠고요. 저희 착용하셨던 리시버는 나가시는 길에 꼭 반납해 주시기를 부탁드립니다. 제7회 세계 인문학 포럼 오늘부터 3일간 금요일까지 열리는데요. 많은 성원과 관심 부탁드립니다. 함께해 주신 여러분 고맙습니다.